All right, Kara, I got a question for you.
What's up?
I always feel like I start my episodes this way.
Every single time.
Every time. Yep. It's like habit at this point. How are you with first impressions?
I'd like to think that I'm pretty decent. Like when it comes to my first impressions of somebody else or vice versa.
Just in general, like, do you think you put forth a good first impression? I feel like you do.
I think I try.
Probably because you don't say too many stupid things right off the gate. In fact, you just avoid saying stupid things.
Yeah, I'm a better listener. I listen before I speak.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I speak and then listen to the ramifications. Now, when it comes to impressions or first impressions, how hard are they to change, in your opinion, of your own or somebody else's, like, really bad first impression?
I mean, I think if you're saying generally, they're probably pretty difficult to overcome if you have a bad first impression to somebody. For me personally, I'm a very forgiving person. So if you leave a bad first impression with me, I will give you a second chance.
Trust me, audience, like I can attest to that. It takes a lot to annoy Kara. But leave it to me with some online graphic design stuff, and I will annoy her, but not make her quit the show. Not yet.
It's like annoying Big Brother stuff. It's fine.
Yes. Yeah. So, like, is it possible then if somebody's trying to go out, is it possible for somebody trying to change that first impression that they can go maybe a little too far and make things worse?
Yeah.
Yeah. Almost to the point where it's like, don't even try to change the first impression. Just kind of like do your thing, obviously improve, but then like don't focus solely on trying to change that first impression.
Yeah. You know that saying, I don't know if it's a saying, but like, well, there's a song. One of my favorites by Joan Jett.
Okay.
I don't give a damn about my bad reputation. Like maybe don't worry about it and just do you. You'll probably do better than worrying about it.
Yeah, like people's opinions will change. Or when they see your actions over time, they'll change.
Yeah. So like if you're a very anxious person about social anxieties and such, sometimes it's better to not think about it than to overthink it.
That's exactly what today's episode is going to be about, because in this episode we are looking at Balloonfest 1986.
Cool.
I feel like there's a lot there to unpack.
There is. I've seen the pictures. I know there's a lot to unpack.
Yes, this is going to be one of these episodes where it's going to be like, what the heck does any of this have to do with 1.5 million balloons being launched in Cleveland, Ohio? And it's going to be one of these things. It's like, I promise we'll get there. But yes, we are talking about the Ohio Balloon Fest or Cleveland Balloon Fest of 1986. And it's going to really answer a lot of questions that many you probably have never had before in your lives. For example, like some of the stuff we're going to cover today is like, what is the Ohio River Valley? You probably have heard of it before, but you probably don't know what it really is or why it's important. I'm sure many of you have stayed up to the wee hours in the morning wondering, like, who founded Cleveland City?
So it's not just me.
Yeah, it's probably just the both of us, and that's it.
But I'll give you a better question. Who decides who founded what if there were already people there?
Yes, that's a very good question. My guess is that if it's named Cleveland City, it was founded by some person by the name of Cleveland. And they probably did so by taking the people that were already living there and telling them via gunpoint, this is what we're going to call it.
Mm-hmm. That sounds more accurate. There you go.
Yeah. But yeah, how did Cleveland, Ohio become so massive in America's industrial history? And what was the cost of all this industrial success? We're going to look at why nobody was really paying attention to this economic success coming out of Cleveland, Ohio. Why did Clevelanders feel, or how did Clevelanders feel about the impact on the environment in the early 1900s? And why would that even matter? We're also going to be looking at what does it mean when a little river catches on fire over and over and over. And then at what point does the federal government need to get involved to fix things environmentally? Because let's just say your little city has got more environmental problems than what is safe for humanity to even comprehend. How did the first black mayor, a major city in America, work with his brother in federal Congress to clean up Cleveland, Ohio, and redirect the entire nation to look at the environment as something that we have to like maintain it, and because we all live in it, and if we don't fix it, it's going to kill us all. And then lastly, we are going to look at what was Balloonfest 86, what happened that made the story of Cleveland, Ohio such a dumpster fire, and why it was so ironic that the celebration ended up the way it did. And all in all, like the moral of the story is like, don't spend too much effort trying to change your reputation. Instead, just show that you changed and let other people catch on and change their minds.
And if they don't, that's their problem.
That's their problem, yes. So we've got all that and probably so much more coming right up. Hello, welcome to the Days of Mr. Fire. I am your host, Ed. With me, as always, is Kara. And for the first time in a long time, I actually get to run an episode.
Woo!
It seems like every single time it's your turn to do an episode, it's like an anthology. It is like,
I know.
It's like the director's cut of Lord of the Rings.
It does. It starts with, I'm going to make this a one shot, and then it turns into a 3 to 4 part campaign. I don't know how it happens, but it just does. And I apologize.
But you're not sorry.
No.
You apologize, but you're not sorry, because this is the reputation you have built for yourself, and this is what you're going to stick by.
Yep, I'll stand by it. I stand by my work.
Yes, yeah, and you are the kind of person that, like, very apparent, what you see is what you get. This episode may not sit well with you all that much because you don't really worry about changing reputations.
No.
But for me, personally, this episode started off with the idea of like, oh, hey, let's just do a cool episode on 1986 where Cleveland decided to launch 1.5 million balloons into the atmosphere, and how that turned into a colossal mess. It would have been like a 20-minute episode, and it would have been like, oh yeah, haha, that's, crappy situation. However, though, when you compare it to why Cleveland was doing this stunt, if you look at it in terms of what was it that Cleveland was trying to tell the world at that time, suddenly there's a lot of irony towards this story, and it's a wild one that is so classic 1800s America. It leaves you unsurprised as well as like face palming the entire way.
That is why my favorite question is why. Never, ever stop asking why.
Unless you're like one of those little annoying kids that just says, why? Why?
No. Why? Please keep doing it.
Yeah, you're going to get punched if you do that to the wrong person.
Like, don't be annoying about it, but it's okay to ask why.
Let's get into it here. We'll start off with part 1, because starting off with part 2 would be weird.
Fair.
Let's look at the Ohio River Valley, and each one of these titles is going to be a festival in its own right. So Ohio River Valley Fest, and I'm sure there are things in play by nerdy historians where they go out and cosplay the Ohio River Valley. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how that would work, but never underestimate the power of LARPing. So would you ever LARP? I'm just curious.
I would. 100%.
Like straight up full regalia out there.
Yep. Full on. I'd do it. If somebody invited me to go LARP and dress up, I'd be so down. I'll get like swords and shields and I'll go all out.
Okay. I would do it if it was in the winter. It's just too dang hot out there. It may not seem like it today, but the state of Ohio and the subsequent Ohio River Valley was like this central hub of transportation for Western expansion and in more recent times, massive industrial capacity. So Ohio kind of goes all the way back to like before the American Civil War. It was very important because geographically where it was located, it's like a area that spans about 900 miles in length, and it has the nation's third largest or longest. I don't know what makes a river large. Is it's like its width or its length? I'm not sure. If it's length or width that matters. All I know is that it's got the third largest river running through it. And it starts off in western Pennsylvania and it winds it southwest, making up the southern borders of Ohio, Indiana, and a small portion of Illinois, and then the northern borders of West Virginia and Kentucky. I remember that student that was like, oh yeah, Mr. Ed, did you know that the southern border of Arizona is identical to the northern border of Mexico?
I like it.
But yeah. Isn't it ironic how it works out that way?
Whoa, it's crazy.
So yeah, the Ohio River Valley is extensive, and I don't know if it's because it's wide or long. Well, everybody has their preference. When we look at this part of this region, it looks like any other part of the northeast of the country. But if you go back into like the colonial times, the region served as an integral part of American expansion. There weren't roads back then. There wasn't really any fast way to get out west. And yes, there was a time when Ohio was considered the far west.
Yep.
I still find that kind of funny where like the idea of California or Arizona or whatever, not even in the imagination. Ohio was the wild, wild west at one point in time in American history. Early Americans quickly learned that if they wanted to get inland at a decent rate of speed, the key is the Ohio River Valley, not just the horse and wagon and canistogas and buggies and hand carts and all that. Kind of like the Oregon Trail, you can go through all your voyage needs on a ferry and send it downstream. If you needed to get out somewhere and you needed to get out there in a hurry, capitalize on those rivers, you can just throw a bunch of crap on a ferry and you can cover like 50 miles in a day instead of like 10 miles if you're walking it. The land in the valley is generally very fertile and easy to grow crops, and the river made it possible to ship the harvest further inland where it could be sold at a premium where the demand was higher. So not only is there like that waterway, they also discovered the land was pretty fertile and kind of temperate. Cool. Like there's a lot to this. It just wasn't because there was like a ton of gold. Right. I feel like in early colonial times in the world, it was like, hey, we're going to expand to try to find gold and riches and whatever. But I feel like Ohio, that whole area became popular because, it's worth it because of the transportation, because of the fertile land. I don't think there's any gold there. Eventually they would find oil there, but we'll get to that in a little bit. During the American Revolution, the Ohio River Valley was highly sought after by both the Continental Army and the British Army and the French. They kind of had a little bit of say in that whole ordeal as well. The river made it possible to move troops all over the place, and the crown promised a lot of land in the valley if they performed well enough in the war and got the Americans kicked out.
I'm going to complicate it a little bit. I'm just going to add another layer to it as well. That particular region and area, if I'm remembering correctly in terms of my geography, is part of the 5 Iroquois Nation Native American tribes, which was one of the major Native American nations at the time. And they were a big asset who allied with the French. So they would ally with the French. They traded with the French. They had a good relationship with the French. And by the time the English colonists came in, it turned into kind of a nightmare scenario on the borderlands.
Oh, yeah.
So you had that going on as well by the time the revolution broke out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that French part of it. But the French and Indian War.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add that layer of Native American history on top of it.
Yeah, because that really does add to the complexity of that region. There's a lot of stuff going on in the Ohio River Valley that kind of put everything in the map. But what I really want to focus on is more or less like what happened after the American Civil War, because that ties more into Balloonfest 86. So, okay, General Moses Cleveland, Cleaveland, arrived in the mouth of the Cuyahoga River, which opens up to Lake Erie. And if you look at where Cuyahoga River sits, it's interesting that where the Cuyahoga River sits is right in the middle of Cleveland City.
That's crazy.
It's such a coincidence that where if you find Cuyahoga, you're going to find Cleveland City.
Right.
Moses Cleveland shows up and he kind of like plants a flag and says that this is now going to basically be Cleveland. And then the whole area became known as Cleveland, Ohio, and eventually Cleveland, as in like Cleveland. We drop an A along the way. So
English.
So yeah, General Moses, he had no idea at the time, but he was setting up a little village, probably just to trade with the Indians at the time and just be like an economic hub out in the Wild West. Because again, this was the Wild West at the time. He had no idea that he was laying a little foundation that would be home to one of the greatest industrial revolutions in history, and would be a major part of modernizing America after the American Civil War. Like, I don't think he had any idea that this was going to happen. And it's kind of weird, like, you know, going all the way back in the year when London first started. I don't think anybody had any idea that London would be one of history's major cities, or Paris or Rome or whatever. Like, nobody has any idea of just how big of a player this little town is going to be when it's just like 25 people in a hut.
Yeah, no, to put it in perspective, just like you and I don't know what's going to happen next week. Neither did these people. They're just people.
Well, and these are people who are trying to let just survive.
Yeah, they're trying to survive. They're trying to trade with native nations who are around, or fight against native nations who are around, or fight against the British or the French or what have you, while trying to
not die of disease. And
it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
It's complicated. Just like life is complicated today.
Yeah, like, granted, today, I'm not worried about where my next meal is coming from. What is a long-standing joke? Marriage is like 98% trying to figure out what you're going to have for dinner that night.
Oh, it's so true, especially when my answer is always, I don't care. What do you want to eat? I'm sure my husband really loves that.
Yeah.
I can see it in his face.
Because the husbands we also know that if we don't make the right thing, that like she does want something, and now it's like we've got to figure out what it is, and there's a right or wrong answer, even though wife said, I don't care, I'm down for whatever you want.
As the woman, I don't think that's accurate. I think it's more like, I really don't know what I want, just start listing things until I say that sounds good, is really what she's trying to say without saying it.
Oh yeah, but then when he actually starts making it, and then so how is it, you're like, yeah, it's okay, it wasn't what I was hoping for.
Anyway,
you probably don't do it very often, but I've seen it happen a lot. But yes, going back to these people here, it's just like they had no idea that what they were doing was going to explode into this major economic and industrial hub down the road. And that leads us to part 2. Industrial Fest 1800s to 1920s. During the American Civil War, Cleveland, Ohio's unique location gave the city a lot of significance. Located between the Ohio River and Lake Erie via the Cuyahoga River, which just so happens to be in the middle of Cleveland City. It's amazing how that worked out. Cleveland transitioned from an economic hub dealing with trading and whatnot to an industrial powerhouse. Water was shown to be handy when converted to steam, and it could be useful when it's moving down a river like the Cuyahoga River. Water has a lot of power. So when we are getting into the steam age, that water and the direction that it flows and everything can determine a lot. I saw a video on YouTube where this blacksmith, he goes to Italy to see like the oldest running power hammer in the world. And this thing goes all the way back to like the early 1800s.
Cool.
And yeah, it's a really, really cool episode. And it's like this old timer that lives there. And basically they run water through this giant wheel. And as the wheel turns, it powers this hammer that they can use for like blacksmithing and whatnot.
Nice.
And it just goes to show you, like, even with modern technology, you got to have that running water. If you don't have running water, like, nothing works.
Well, like, think about it today. All the water consumption that those data centers are using, and it's a whole ordeal right now. It's kind of a through line. Water is an incredibly important resource.
Yeah. It's just something that we don't, like in America, we don't really think about it all that much because, we have running water, like, everywhere. But there's parts of the world where running water is the resource. That is the thing that must be there in order for all of society to function. Whereas like in today, it still is that way, even more so, but we have so much abundance and access to it that we don't think about it. And in the case of Cleveland, Ohio, that water resulted in a lot of mills, factories, steam-based factories. It became a giant factory city. As a result, Cleveland, Ohio took on a new image of smokestacks and loud steam-powered factories, giant water wheels, and sketchy chemicals being dumped all over the place. It's kind of like when you play those city builder games, like the early days when you're building your city and your factories are nothing but these toxic depots of teratogens and sludge and goo everywhere. Unfortunately, without technology and modern policy to clean all that stuff up, that's what you're going to have. In the 1870s, John D. Rockefeller. Yeah, this poor little guy.
Poor Rockefeller.
Yeah, like...
I have no sympathy for Rockefeller.
Well, it's just crazy to think, like, he was around in the 1870s. Like, that guy had a long career.
He did.
So, like, in the 1870s, Rockefeller set up oil production in and all over Ohio. There weren't any cars yet, so it wasn't like oil was in super demand for gasoline. But Rockefeller's Standard Oil empire started off by distilling kerosene out of crude oil. That kerosene you can use for a lot of different things. Lamps, you can use it for cleaning. If you need to light a bunch of stuff on fire, kerosene all the way. One of the biggest byproducts of this kerosene production was an abundance of gasoline. It was explosive and no one knew what to do with it. So they just dumped it into the rivers.
Oh, good.
They did that for decades. There is no measurable figure that I could find, but it's estimated that over 100 million barrels of petroleum byproducts were dumped into Ohio's waterways, the Cuyahoga River being the major one, because it just had to establish itself in the middle of Cleveland. And all this industrial waste literally made the rivers and parts of Lake Erie flammable. But more on that later.
Cool.
The discovery and exploitation of oil and natural gas was generally accepted as a normal price of conducting business because the extraction process meant destroying the landscape. It wasn't long in the 19th and 20th centuries that Ohio went from a beautiful, pristine, agrarian countryside that everybody kind of wanted to live in because it was so dang clean to an industrial wasteland of like Mad Max proportions. So yeah, Ohio was it was quickly changing, especially right after the Civil War. And keep in mind, I understand I'm leaving out the Native Americans.
I actually had a different question.
That was it just occurred to me like,
oh, okay,
yeah, but what about the natives in there? Oh yeah, they were handled.
They were pushed out. They at this point they were very much pushed out into reservations and by force and.
Well, And we see this trend over and over and over in American history where they get pushed to reservations or lands where there's economically nothing to it that anybody wants.
Correct.
And then they find a resource there that everybody wants, and then they get pushed to another one.
Correct.
Like they're literally being pushed from one location to the next, thinking that, okay, yeah, there's nothing here that we want. That's all yours, until we find like, oh my gosh, there's a ton of oil here. Well, you guys need to pack up and move.
And to make it even more infuriating, legally speaking, how they did so was they made treaties and promises with the native nations, and then they broke them every single time.
Oh, yeah.
It's infuriating.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was always like that. Or they would write these contracts in such a way that there's no way the Native American guy signing it would have any idea what this means. Yeah, they purposely made it one-sided and super, super sketchy. And I think the only reason why they did it that way was so that the white folks could be like, oh, hey, yeah, no, we tried to be equitable. We tried to be fair with the natives. And we're just doing what was in the contract. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. I guess that leads into my question that I had.
Yeah.
All of this industrialization and destruction of land, lovely. Did that lead to any, that you could find any like court cases or legal disputes or anything like that where it like actually changed the way society was running due to the environmental changes?
That is a solid question. And
it's okay if you didn't. I'm genuinely just curious.
So it did actually cross my mind. And the reason why I didn't really throw it in the notes here is because the court cases were weird. It wasn't like an environmental related court case that we see today where like, hey, all this water, drinking water is contaminated by this company dumping crap in there or whatever, and they need to pay to fix it and all that stuff. That's not how it worked back then. In the 1800s, even early 1900s, the court cases revolved around like, hey, that's my water and it's designed to be used for my factory and not your factory.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of court cases around that. A major one, I think it was more towards the 1900s. It was like, hey, how are you getting oil out of my land? Like that was a big one. Instead of like, you could sell land, but not oil rights to somebody. And the way that it would work is that the neighbor could actually drill underneath your land from their land and then siphon oil out.
Mm.
Rockefeller was a big proponent of that. And so like here you are getting ready to drill your land because you found out a ton of oil on it and find out that there's nothing there because it got sucked out years before by your neighbor. So there's a lot of court cases like that, but nothing that really, not a whole lot that really showed like, dude, we are destroying the landscape here. Like we got to.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't see that until later. The reason I ask is because, well, let me put it this way. Would you say that looking at those court cases, the economics of it all and all of that fun stuff, that the environmental changes are causing or a part of like broad changes in society? Are they driving historical change?
I feel like the changes that were taking place were in response to the demands of history at that time, or demands of the people.
Right. Who are, you could argue, who are making their choices based off of the environment that they're living in.
Not sure I exactly follow.
So there could be an argument where people who are dependent on the environment they're living in are making legal, economic, judicial, cultural decisions based off of the environmental changes that are occurring.
Yeah, I think I understand that correctly, in that in my mind, the people that were developing all of these up and coming industries I want to talk about here, I think they knew that there was going to be negative consequences to the land in terms of like livability and usability and all that stuff. I just don't think they cared, probably because they're like,
no,
it's not that much land. Like America's freaking huge. Like what's destroying a couple thousand square miles really going to do in the grand scheme of things?
Right. Then they would up and move and
Yeah, well, they just didn't have the forethought to think like, we got to approach this somewhat carefully before we destroy all this. Or the other thing they probably thought of too is like, well, that's a problem for like my grandchildren to figure out, not mine.
Oh yeah, I was thinking more broad. I'll let you ponder on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to process like the nature of the question, because maybe I'm thinking of it too directly, because it's like, yeah, people wanted goods and stuff has to be manufactured, and America was industrializing commercially after the Civil War, especially in the 1880s, 1890s. That's where we start getting like those, basically the American aristocrats and stuff like that were just dominating the industrial scene. And so like they're going to do whatever they can to make their profits happen, regardless of the land. Mm-hmm. But I'm probably not thinking of the question right.
That's okay. Now I'm just genuinely curious. If anybody wants to answer that question, write in. Let me know. Because I have an answer to that question, but I want to know if anybody else has a different perspective.
If anybody understands the question, please reach out to me at the davesumsterfire@gmail.com.
Work on it together, and then I'll give you the answer next week.
Rockefeller, he wasn't the only one that was looking at Ohio. We've got oil, but there was a lot of other things that these industrial tycoons in America's Gilded Age was looking at. Probably the biggest one, in my opinion, was the steel industry. Cleveland Rolling Mill Company and U.S. Steel, capitalizing on massive coal and iron ore deposits in the state. Ohio became a steel mecca for the nation and even the world. After Chicago, I don't want to say completely burned down, but a good portion of it burned down in 1871. If you want a deeper dive into that, check out episode 5, the Chicago fire. That's
way back.
That's a golden oldie right there. That's a legit dumpster fire. After Chicago burned down in 1871, the plan was to rebuild the city using fireproof steel, which drove demand way up for Ohio steel companies, probably because of its proximity. It's not like steel is super easy to move without a train. There were so many steel factories in Ohio that when the boom turned to bust in the 1950s and 1960s, the abandoned factories began rusting, and the Ohio River Valley then became known as the Rust Belt. And it still is that way to this day. They call it the Rust Belt. The rubber and tire giants, with oil being present and chemistry coming along with it, not to mention automobiles needing tires in the turn of the century, Goodyear, Firestone, and Goodrich tire companies sprung up in Akron. So that's like how Akron got its start, was making rubber. The demand for car tires and rubber never really diminished all that much. And when tires needed steel radials in 1946, it was a match made in heaven. And we got a city that produces a lot of steel, and we've got a state that produces a lot of rubber. You put the two together. Oh yeah. You can't go wrong, especially when they're in such close proximity to each other. So yeah, tires, big deal. Dow Chemical, founded by Case Western Reserve graduate, and financed with financing from Cleveland investors in the late 19th century, introducing large-scale chemical innovation to the region's industrial footprint. So Dow Chemical came along, and they're like, "Oh, we can do a lot with oil. Like, we can make all sorts of different products." And when I took my science, or the history of science in college, this was brought up a lot. Like, first we discover a resource, or we have a huge need for something, and then we discover a resource, and then the science catches up with it. And the science then propels the research to develop new technology, which then the technology goes into making more demands for resources that are then found to make more technology to fund the science to make, like, it's this pattern that always follows hand in hand. And we'll always see like, hey, once like England, right? They've discovered one of the largest coal deposits in the world. You'll look at England in the 1830s, 40s, 50s, 60s. They're the world's number one superpower. And then a lot of science was coming out of there, which then propelled everything like that. It's progress, basically. Science, resources, and engineering all go hand in hand in that respect. And that Dow Chemical, which is still around to this day, is one of those people that came in like, hey, we're going to bring our science with us, and we're really going to capitalize on this area. Coal in Ohio and massive train infrastructure was erected specifically to strip mine coal out of southeastern Ohio, fundamentally altering the topography of the land. I think the coal part of it really kind of goes into like Pennsylvania. I feel like Pennsylvania is a huge coal deposit, and parts of Ohio subsequently had veins of coal in it. The good old-fashioned rail. When coal was discovered in Ohio, and along with the development of steel mills, the large-scale engine fabrication, and a bunch of other technologies and resources, the railroad industry exploded, with Ohio becoming the central hub for anyone who wanted to take a train to the west or take a train going back to the east. Ohio was like, and I think it still is today, they make a lot of trains there. Manufacturing. A little company called Procter & Gamble started in Cincinnati in the 1830s, and today is one of the largest consumer goods corporations in the world. It is believed that at least 50% of the consumable goods in your home are made by P&G. Kroger started in 1883 in Cincinnati as a small grocery store, and now today they're among the largest grocers in the world. Owens Corning started up in Toledo in the 1890s, and they're involved with anything with glass in it. There's a very, very famous type of glass out there called Pyrex.
I hear Pyrex and I think of baking. So
Yep, that's what it was for.
Yeah.
That was the original intention was for baking, because that way you could bake stuff without your glass pan exploding. And the reason why it was good for baking is because the glass didn't expand or contract under temperature.
Mm-hmm.
So this is but a small tasting of what was coming out of Ohio during the 1800s, going into the early 1900s. All these establishments were hugely successful, but took a toll on the Ohio countryside. On one hand, the state of Ohio was raking in the money for both the industrial captains and people actually working there, right? These people were blue-collar workers that were actually making decent money for having a trade. This was back in a time in American history where you could work in a factory as a single income household and live comfortably. You can't do that today. It doesn't work like that. To put it in perspective, a worker in the late 1800s was making about $12 per week. By the 1920s, it wasn't uncommon for a worker to clear $120 a month. So that's like $30 a week. That's pretty good. That's way above inflation. However, just like anything that is tied to an industrial revolution, as long as the money kept flowing in, the education of the population, as well as the environment or on and around the Great Lakes, could fall to pieces. Nobody really cared. It's funny how Americans can forgo a lot of common sense in education if it means not taking care of the place they live in. Like, we are totally open to turning a blind eye to a great deal of things just so that something else can thrive. It's weird how we do that as a species. However, things got to a part in the 20s and the 30s where the environment in Ohio was getting so bad that the residents started to show pride in how terrible the place looked and smelled like.
It's like a teenager when you walk into their room. You smell that?
Yeah. That's my teenageriness.
That's right.
The issue was that all this industry was new and it was producing goods at a global scale. New technologies like electricity, hydraulics, adhesives, and rubber production were state of the art and changed the world in terms of consumer goods. But they all had byproducts that no one knew what to do about them. Like we're making all this toxic goo, but as long as it's not in our drinking water, we don't care. And so how do you get rid of it? Dump it in a river. A primary example was the disposal of gasoline into the water supply after oil refineries got done with the processing of millions of gallons of oil. At the time in the late 1800s and early 1900s, gasoline was nothing more than something that could be dumped into the river because it didn't burn very cleanly or serve any purpose. This was also the case for other byproducts like machine lubricants, paraffin waxes, naphtha, diesel, and so much more. Since none of these byproducts had any sort of market to sell to, everyone just dumped the vats of chemicals into the Cuyahoga River. Like,
nice. That's lovely.
If you look at old pictures of these factories, they literally had drains inside the factories where you could just dump whatever you had straight into these drains, and then it just flushed straight out into the Cuyahoga River.
I do want to add that this is a very common practice in any industrial society. It happened in Europe. It happened in Japan. It happened all over the world that was in the process of industrializing. So it wasn't just here. It was a global phenomenon of trying to figure out how to dispose of toxic waste.
Yeah, because, I mean, they just figured if it's out of sight, out of mind. It's not toxic if it's someplace else.
Yeah.
Not realizing that someplace else is going to get to you one way or another. Probably one of the more famous examples of this happening was London in the 1830s.
Mm-hmm.
With its industrializing, like the city was literally black with soot. And the living conditions there were so horrible that like it spawned a group of writers called the Romantics that would literally write poems about a freaking tree because there were kids that had never seen a tree before. Like that's how crazy it was getting with all this industrializing. So yeah, you're right. It's not just Ohio. This even happened in New York. It happened in Chicago. It happened in all the major cities across the world. Like the process of industrializing does result in a lot of environmental destruction. Each one is their own episode of the show, I think.
Facts. It's true.
This one's a little unique because it involves balloons, and we'll get there. It all got to the point where parts of the Cuyahoga River stopped flowing because of all the byproducts from the factories. It is estimated that the sludge thickness would exceed 3 feet in part. This just wasn't some local matter. The residents of Cleveland knew that the city was turning into industrial wasteland, but they, for the most part, agreed that the sludge was directly proportional to the amount of money people were making. So in a weird, perverse way, the more toxic sludge, the more money to be had. And for most part, the people were fine with it. And for me, this is a major, major red flag. Like if you see something like this in real life, especially like at your job, if your job openly just makes fun of an aspect of it that it really, really, really sucks at, and people almost take pride in that aspect of the company sucking, that's a surefire sign that there's going to be absolutely no improvement anytime soon. Like it's just going to keep going forever. We saw this in trucking. After a massive, massive lull, the trucking market like exploded in like 2020 and 2021, and nothing was delivering on time because all the trucking companies knew that the demand for trucking was so high. Who cares? Like service didn't mean anything. So, and it got to the point where people would just joke about how crappy they were in terms of their ability to deliver on time. And that changed when the market flipped, and then it was in the customer's hands, and they're like, we're not paying anything extra. We're not paying you guys anymore to fail deliveries. And then it's a really hard change after that. So wherever you're at, whether it's a part-time job at a fast food restaurant or whatever, or a corporate office, like if you see the employees joking and having a sense of humor about an aspect that the company really sucks at, don't expect any change to take place anytime soon. And when it does take place, it's going to be very, very hard. And it's going to be very political, and people are going to lose jobs. And just doesn't mean that's what's going to happen to you, but just note that that's going to be a dynamic that could be coming your way eventually. All right. So according to Lorraine Boisonnault, I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced, or I guess if it's proper French, it would be Lorraine Boisonnault. So either way, this lady named Lorraine wrote in the Smithsonian Museum, everyone knew the river was polluted, but nobody much cared. If anything, it was a badge of honor. David Newton writes in Chemistry of the Environment. That sounds like a fun read.
Oh, yeah.
Chemistry of the environment. Fundamentally, this level of environmental degradation was accepted as a sign of success. So, to your point earlier about like what was fueling this, that like at this time, now we're in like the 1920s, dude, it was the only thing that was fueling this change or this relationship with the environment was economics, pure and simple money. People didn't really care about the environmental factors, not yet. Hopefully that does answer the question you asked before. I'm still trying to figure out the actual question itself. I'll wake up tomorrow morning and be like, oh, that's what you meant.
No, that answers it.
Okay.
You're good.
Yeah, your questions get a little more involved now that you're in graduate school, and you probably get asked these as like basic questions in class where I'm like, the answer's 12.
It's probably the way I should work on how I word the question.
Like, well, first of all, before I answer your question, I need to know how many gallons are in a mile. Once we figure that out, then I can answer your question.
There you go. I hate that question so much.
We can see this firsthand. And I'm a lit major, you're a history major, but I look at a lot of literature, or I look at history through the lens of literature, which is part of the reason why our take on the American Civil War is different. Which again, we got to do that episode one of these days. It's going to be amazing. So you look at the literature of the time, and these newspaper articles say it all. You don't even have to read the articles to understand just how bad it was getting in Cleveland. Cuyahoga River covered in feet of oil. Okay. Sewers empty raw waste directly into the waterway.
Cool.
Polluted river reaches city water intakes.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, yeah. To abate smoke nuisance. So how do you live with toxic pollution?
Good.
You're right. Yeah. Okay. Dense black smoke pours from mills unchecked.
Unchecked.
Yeah. A lot of that going on. City's air is shrouded in grime and soot.
That's descriptive. I like it.
Mm-hmm. And Cuyahoga River covered in feet of oil, which
that's very similar to the first one.
Uh-huh. In fact, I think that's where it came from. But anyways, my personal favorite, and we're going to get into this here. Cuyahoga River catches fire for X time.
Nice.
In other words, we will
see.
Yeah, like the Cuyahoga River catches fire on the blank time is like the first time, the third time, the fifth time, the sixth time. It's like a Star Wars movie. They just keep slamming them out. And, episode 10, the river's on fire. Like
again. But this time it's different somehow.
Yes. The fire is a different color because it's a different sludge that's burning. The fire is green this time. Last time it was purple, but people like the green more than the purple.
We'll take a poll next week on the next color.
Yeah, like the next fire is like, the next fire, we're hoping that it will be pink in homage to Easter, which is right around the corner. Like... Easter Bunny would be happy for pastel fire from the Cuyahoga River. Cuyahoga River catches fire in green and red in celebration of Santa Claus coming to town.
Gosh. It's like changing the color of lights on a building for a holiday.
Yeah. Just whatever you want you to celebrate, your river can burn in that color.
Just dump your chemical of choice.
Yes. So as you can probably notice and clearly see, nothing good could possibly come from a river that more or less looks like the La Brea tar pit than a waterway.
Cool.
Thankfully, all it took was for the Cuyahoga River to catch fire at least 13 times before any good can come of it.
Nice.
And somehow this all tied to hundreds of thousands of balloons bringing, let me rephrase all that. And somehow this all tied to hundreds of thousands of balloons bringing the entire region to a halt. Part 3. Flammable water in the Badge Fest. Be thankful, Kara, that I proofread this before I sent it to you, because I originally wrote flammable water and the Vag Fest.
Oh, that would have been better.
The Vag Fest is tacos everywhere.
Everywhere. That would have been so much better.
So, flammable water and the Badge Fest. You heard that title right. Flammable water. With the Cuyahoga River essentially being the toxic runoff for all the hydrocarbon-based industry that surrounded the river, it was a matter of time before the river itself would take on a different persona. By looking at the titles of articles recently mentioned, it not only became a sad reality, but a sense of pride that the river was an icon of toxic waste. After all, the dirtier the water, the more money people were making. That's a fine dandy until someone falls in. It's generally understood that if you fell into the river, you wouldn't be able to swim because the sludge would impede your body's efforts to swim.
Ew.
Yeah, you are a... I don't know if you knew this, Kara, but you're literally a leather sack of water.
Yes, I'm aware.
All humans are.
Mm-hmm.
We're like 75, 80% water. And water, like oil, floats on water. So, like, our bodies can actually fall into water and float. Like, we're kind of designed that way, evolutionary-wise. But if you fall into a thing of oil, you're not going to have the buoyancy. You're not going to float. In fact, you're probably going to sink. So, if you could manage to get out, well, you're going to the hospital because you're going to have severe toxicity and chemical burns all over your body just from falling into a river. If you couldn't get out, then you would simply dissolve because of the acids and the corrosive compounds that they just dumped into the river.
I don't know which is worse.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
That's a rough way to go.
It is. And I couldn't find resources or sources that indicated how many people may have fallen in over the years. But like, I'm sure there were, like, during the Great Depression, there was homeless people that fell in that nobody knew or even bothered to investigate.
Probably.
It's like the canal over where I work. It's like, I don't want to fathom how many bodies are in that canal. Like, we see the technicians out there working on the canal, and they don't even want to know what's in there. Like, it's just too sketchy. Furthermore, when water could be pulled out of the toxic sludge, it was undrinkable. For people reported noxious smells and odors, and the water had a strong chemical flavor to it. So even if you could get clear,
I'd imagine,
doing air quotes, clear drinking water out of it, it smelled like Windex, and it would probably do a better job than Windex. If this was a flowing river, then why didn't it just flow out? Like, why didn't all this sludge just flow out into Lake Erie?
It's too heavy.
Well, the short answer is that a lot of it did. But the water made it out there. But oil is less dense than water, and it congeals on top of the surface. And this is where something strange can actually happen. The toxic sludge, what sits as a foundation of which has a foundation of oils, sits independent of the river's current and therefore can remain stationary while the water underneath keeps flowing. So, like, the water underneath this goo is flowing like crazy, but everything above it can actually sometimes go in the opposite direction. Because remember, if a river is flowing downhill, well, this sludge floats on water.
Yeah.
So it can actually go in the opposite direction in certain cases. Really weird stuff, man. So this means that the sludge stays put, and the horrific stuff Cleveland's industries kept dumping into the river just kept on piling up. That leads us to a fateful day in 1868, and then another in 1883, followed by 1887, and then who couldn't forget about the day in 1912 and 1922? More importantly, the day in 1936. And 1941 and 1948. And then there was that fateful day in 1952. And then lastly, the June 22nd of 1969. Very, very, very fateful days. These all mark the years in which the Cuyahoga River exploded into flames, as though some sorcerer kept casting fireballs in your D&D campaign.
No! Wait, think about it first.
Yeah, think about the children. That's right. The black, sludgy La Brea tar pit that is Cuyahoga River. You know, the symbol of pride and joy for the denizens who helped turn the river that way to line their pockets with dirty cash, kept on catching fire over and over. Who would have thought that such a thing was possible? And we've talked about some crazy fires in the past, like episode 5, the Chicago fire, find on the daysubstantialfire.com. Episode 27, the Torrey Canyon oil disaster. That was an interesting one where they tried to burn the oil from an oil spill in the middle of the ocean. Or more recently, episode 63 and 64, the Deepwater Horizon. It is possible for water to catch fire, but it requires an extremely unique set of circumstances to make it happen even once. It's even more special when it happens like over 10 times. Like after the 5th time, I think somebody would be like, okay, guys,
we gotta figure this out.
A reoccurring theme here that our river keeps catching fire. We should probably do something about it. What do? Dump more flammable chemicals into the river.
Right. That's it.
Like, go big or go home, baby. Don't mess around with the Cuyahoga. Just give it all you got.
Yeah.
Yeah. Suddenly, the Vag Fest sounds a lot more promising.
Oh, gosh.
Give it all you got there has a completely different connotation than give it all you got with the Cuyahoga River.
Well, that's true.
Unless there's a weird set of circumstances where you get dissolved in both scenarios.
Oh, that'd be unfortunate. At least in one scenario, you're having a good time versus the other one where it just sucks.
So the Cuyahoga River kept catching fire. It caught fire at least 10 times. I have it written here, but I remember reading another source that mentioned that it was like 13 times.
Just a lot.
I hate to say it, but it happens so often that a lot of times the newspapers didn't even report it.
It's just a lot.
Which I find hilarious. It's just like, oh yeah, it caught on fire. Whoop-de-doo. So it caught fire so many times that they lost track of dates and times of the exact moments that it happened, especially in the 1800s, because by this time it was very mundane. It was just part of doing business. This gives you an idea of just how nasty this river was. We generally don't assume toxicity or toxically flammable substances being healthy for sustaining human life, and burning river kind of seals the deal, so to speak. So yeah, we don't really think about it. But when your river is catching on fire, what was that news report that one lady was complaining like her water smelled funny, and then she took her garden hose, turned it on, pointed it out in her backyard, and then took like a match underneath it and then like lit her garden water stream on fire.
Wow. There's a lot going on there.
I can't remember where that was at. I think it was like Michigan or something like that, but that was pretty funny. Just like she's just out there like a flamethrower. Just her garden hose was just spewing out flames. Like,
so bad.
That's that ain't supposed to happen that way. The causes of the fires for the most part are unknown because it was so easy to catch on fire. One of them was caused by a train throwing a spark on the tracks. Just one little spark in there, poof, everything is on fire. It could be caused by a cigarette being thrown out of a car window. Something too hot being ejected from a factory, like a piece of metal. I didn't know this, but anything that is over 230 degrees in freedom units can ignite oil, like motor oil, not cooking oil.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like cooking oil, that's like 300 to 400 degrees. But yeah, if you had a piece of metal, like I would say like a forge or a steel mill or something like that, and they just dump their slag out there, boom, river's on fire. So crap. Okay. It could be a homeless dude trying to start like a little fire on the side of the riverbank, just trying to be warm. Next thing you know, Inferno. It's like one of the circles of hell in Dante's Inferno. Or probably more realistically, a wayward sorcerer who ended up in the real world and decided to cast a fireball. I think
that's more realistic. Yeah, I think so.
I have visions of like some Gandalf-like dude like LARPing out there, throwing like paper towel balls doused in gasoline on fire into the river. Like that's how I see that LARPing going bad.
I like it.
It's a very bro thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're gonna go wizard LARPing, and so we're gonna take kerosene and douse it in rags and throw it at each other. Now, what's strange is that even though the river caught fire all these times, it didn't do a lot of damage, probably because there was nothing around the river that could really be damaged that wasn't already toxically infected. It wasn't anything like the Chicago fire burning, like Chicago, like burning down or something like it. The fires would generally cost less than about $100,000 worth of damage. When while that's even a lot of money, no matter how you look at it, for the time period, compared to the millions of dollars, or not billions of dollars being generated by the industries, $100,000 is, that's just a small little claim. It's really not that big of a deal. So newspapers had a field day with the fires, though. And see here. Oh, yeah. So newspapers had a field day with the fires, though, and they did everything in their power to make fun of the entire state of Ohio, and especially the city of Cleveland. And it became known as the mistake on the lake.
I mean, after like 10 to 15 times, and it's still happening.
Yeah.
I can't fall. Mistake on the lake's pretty good.
Well, and before, like, I don't think Cleveland really cared all that much. Like, yeah, whatever. Our city is a toxic wasteland. We're making a ton of money. Call us what you want. But now we're getting into like 1960s America, where this is pre-internet, but like stories could go viral across the nation really fast.
We have television now.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Crap. I forgot all about television. Yes. Television. I mean, crap. Look at like Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
The first major war that was filmed live. Like you had reporters on the ground reporting on it live. Suddenly, Ohio, the state of Ohio, and Cleveland being known as the mistake on the lake, this could be a bit of a problem. After a period of time, you could have so many of these news reports going around. But once this reputation is set, and it's so common to the far reaches of the nation, like this is going to be an issue. Like, for example, like every major city has a reputation. Like Phoenix is great during the winter, but notoriously miserable during the summer months. Los Angeles is known as like this glamorous global hub for entertainment and culture. It's also well known for its homeless population, dreaded traffic, and endless urban sprawl. Like every city has its reputation. However, if you prided your city in economic success in conjunction with the river that caught fire on a regular basis due to toxic industrial runoff, and suddenly the entire nation only sees it as an industrial wasteland, too dangerous to visit, let alone live, then you've got a serious problem on your hands.
Did it get so big to the point where it was like Walter Cronkite reporting on it? Or not that big?
Yes. Yeah, I would say, especially in the late 60s going into the 70s, it did get big enough where it was hitting like national news.
Okay.
Like just the environment of Cleveland, its status, its safety rating, all that kind of stuff. And it's really going to come to a head here in a minute, because we have a lot, we are starting to see like environmentalists and environmental scientists, and people are starting to speak up about humanity's relationship with nature. And then when you look at Cleveland, Ohio, and like there is no relationship to nature. Nature's dead. Humanity poisoned it, kind of a thing. That makes it really, really, really hard to grow a city when suddenly nobody wants to visit it because of this reputation. Even every city must have some marketable characteristics to make itself viable. However, Cleveland was in such dire environmental straits that no matter how much money could be had from its factories and industries, no one would want to risk their lives to go there. To just be like, yeah, no, man, I'm good. I think I will literally live anywhere else. Whereas in the 1800s, it's like, yeah, it kind of sucks and it's dangerous, but you'll make enough money that you can afford a good quality of life. And what changed in the 1960s and 70s is like, there's no amount of money that is going to be able to help me live with any quality of life and not die of some cancerous, toxic, teratogenous poison. So things were getting so bad in Ohio that President Richard Nixon needed to get involved. And you know it's bad when you have Tricky Dick. Like you're calling on him for help, because it's getting so awful.
I think if it's anytime you need to call in the federal government to help with an environmental issue, that's a problem.
And it really wasn't so much that Cleveland was reaching out or Ohio was reaching out. It was just like everybody around, like the concerned neighbors were like, hey, do you know what's going on in Cleveland? Because it is getting bad over there. And it's also getting to the point where a lot of the pollution and the stuff that was going on in Cleveland wasn't staying in there. It was going over the borders. It was going into like Canada, and yeah, it was spreading all over the place. So yeah, Tricky Dick had to get involved. This was 2 years prior to Watergate, so he wasn't known for his corruption quite yet. When one location is responsible for so many issues and these issues start crossing over into federal lands or crossing state boundaries, then the federal government must get involved. The issue is that when it comes to environmental issues, the laws and regulations were, well, all over the place. There really wasn't anything in place. So like all the environmental laws and all that stuff, they were scattered all over the nation. There was no one cohesive organization that could hold on to all that and regulate it and enforce it and whatnot. When looking at Cleveland, Ohio, and all the craziness going on there, that pollution, like all the different pollutions of like the air pollution, the water pollution, the mediums in which everything was residing in, like the toxins and all that stuff, the different causes of the pollution, it was impossible just to pick one agency to get everything cleaned up. And the last thing you want is a bunch of dudes with different badges coming together saying they're going to work together to fix everything. American agencies do not like working with each other. Just something I've noticed over the years, right? Especially like law enforcement, like you get local police forces that have to work with the FBI. They tolerate each other at best. So to have like all the different types of pollution get addressed in America at that time in Cleveland, it would require all sorts of different departments and whatnot. Therefore, in order for Richard Nixon to take any sort of cohesive action in Ohio, he needed to consolidate all the departments and agencies into one umbrella. And that umbrella was called the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, which is still around to this day, although it's being heavily dismantled as well. But again, that will probably be an episode for this podcast in years' time. So this meant that the dudes in suits and ties with sunglasses only needed to flash one badge to fling his authority around and didn't have to worry about someone else slinging their badges around in some weird badge fest. So get that visual out of your head.
I mean, it just looks like a dumb SNL skit in my head, but
right? Yeah, I can see that actually being a funny SNL skit. It's important to know that the EPA, like you read a lot of articles about this whole event or this whole thing in Cleveland, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, this is the cause of the EPA." No. There was environmental issues going on all over America. As you brought up earlier in the episode, like it just wasn't in Cleveland. I mean, there was issues in New York, in Chicago, in LA, in all the major cities that had any sort of manufacturing capabilities. They had issues as well.
Well, yeah, and one of the most famous ones in the same time period is Los Angeles with the smog issues that they had. So between like 1960 something to the 1980s, as late as the 80s, the smog problem in Los Angeles was really bad.
Now, fun fact or a foreshadowing, the same issue that causes the smog problem in LA, even today, it's still an issue that they're battling. And it's not because like LA is a dirty city or anything like that.
It's just the amount of cars, the amount of
It's
people.
not even that.
The hills.
It has to do with the geography.
Mm-hmm. The hills and the ocean.
And the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was trying to get at is the issue that makes Balloonfest turn into a dumpster fire is the same exact thing that's happening in LA with its air quality issues. And it's not quite what you'd think. It's it's really no one's fault per se. It's not like people are being like, oh, haha, I'm going to figure out a way to make this impossible for humanity to live here. Not the case at all, as we'll see when we get to it. So now if we look at, if we look at the rest of America, the EPA really did need to come in and kind of get things fixed at a federal level. They needed states to be held accountable. And the Cuyahoga River in 1965, that fire is the thing that kind of like forced Nixon's hand to be like, okay, we need this to come together a little faster. Yeah, EPA was established, but it wasn't this whole, it wasn't because of the Cuyahoga River fire and because of Cleveland. It was issues all across. But boy, did the fire and the river fire kind of like, okay, we got to make this happen like tomorrow kind of a thing. And so now when your city is in such bad shape that the federal government is actually willing to work together and play nice to help clean up your act, it just gets better and better. And that leads us to part 5, Operation Cuyahoga Cleanup Fest. We're going to meet some interesting people here, actually an interesting mayor. And I kind of want to read up more on this guy, especially in the time frame that we're looking at with civil rights and Black folks in being in leadership positions and whatnot. Like this guy was pretty incredible. While the situation in Ohio was pretty gnarly from an environmental perspective, the rest of the nation looked inward. And some folks pointed out that even though your rivers might not spontaneously combust, they themselves had issues. Rachel Carson, probably the most famous person in terms of environmental science, wrote Silent Spring, published in 1962, and it opened America's eyes to the world of pesticides and especially DDT. Just because pesticides don't kill you, like Kara, you and I could go drink pesticides and be fine. Maybe give us a stomachache or whatever, but it's not going to kill us. The issue is, and what people didn't realize back then, is that these pesticides would leach into the water supply, and then other animals like birds, like bald eagles, would get traces of these pesticides in their systems. And what it was doing is that it was thinning the lining or the eggshell thickness. And so the population of American bald eagles is starting to go down because the eggs weren't strong enough to perpetuate the species, so to speak. That's what Silent Spring is really about. And once people are like, oh my gosh, the eagles, we can't let anything bad happen to the eagles, people then started to speak up about pesticides. And the big one was DDT. And please, I did a report on it in high school, and DDT is like 47 characters long. I can't remember all of that off the top of my head. So we're just going to stick with DDT for the purposes of this episode.
That's wise.
So Dr. Ruth Patrick was a prominent freshwater ecologist and was responsible for the development of the Clean Water Act by figuring out innovative ways to test water. I had no idea, but testing water is a really complicated process.
I can imagine.
I tested when I had aquariums. I would test water all the time. Ammonia, nitrite, nitrates, pH. Easy. Like buy a kit for like $10. Yeah, that's because of the science that this lady worked on. Like testing water is a very complicated thing. I had no idea. Gaylord Nelson. That sounds like such like a politician name. Nelson.
I just think of Meet the Fockers, honestly.
Right? He was a U.S. senator who founded Earth Day in 1970 to bring awareness to the importance of protecting the environment.
Nice.
All right, cool. We all know Jane Goodall. Her work was primarily with primates, but she was an activist. She spoke up a lot. But she also showed that primates were an advanced species. They weren't that far different than humans. And like the primates out there, they have a very, very, very close relationship to the environment. And how if the primates are in a bad environment, that's going to ruin that population of primates. The same way that if humans are in a bad environment, it's going to ruin our population at bare minimum, like our way of life and culture and health and all that kind of stuff. So she kind of helped open the doors up to like, guys, you can't just torch the countryside and think that there won't be any consequences. Like, just so you know.
FYI.
Barry Commoner, an ecologist, showed a link between science and social responsibility. In other words, technology is cool and all, but at what cost to the environment and ecosystems? Since we're the top species on the planet, he argued we have a responsibility to look after it, even with all our fancy technology. So like, we can't just be taking and taking and taking from the land without any sort of mindset of giving anything back. Right? He kind of introduced the idea of a zero-sum ecology in terms of like, hey, if you chop down all the trees, you're not going to have any more trees. That's it. You've got, and so like now like deforestation and stuff like that. I know it's a big problem in Brazil, but like in America, when you chop down a bunch of trees, these lumber companies also are responsible for planting new ones. So like now there's a running cycle of trees that are always being grown. So that's what Commoner came up with. And then the guy that I really wouldn't mind meeting, I don't know if he's still alive or not. Probably not. He would have been really, really old today, but is Cleveland Mayor Carl Stokes. He's the first black mayor to become a mayor of a major U.S. city in 1967. After the fire in 1969, he had enough of what Cleveland had turned into and decided to do something about it. So he kind of made it his tenure in office was going to be like, I'm going to fix this city. And that was like his thing.
Mr. Stokes passed away in 1996.
Oh, man, that sucks. Well, I'm sure there's biographies and books about him and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. You'll guaranteed you'll be able to find something.
Because, like, you know for a fact, this dude, at this time in American history, running point on an activist scene, as well as being black, with the height of the civil rights movement and all that stuff, his brother being in federal politics and all that stuff, you know these guys, they experienced probably a wide gamut of things that I probably have never even imagined facing in my life. It's one thing to try to survive as a black man. It's another thing to become like a major leader of a city and try to change the nation's mindset on something and not get killed in the process. Like it's interesting because I mean, this is right around the time Martin Luther King was killed. Stokes understood that the population of Cleveland was tanking and fast because of all the news reports and everything. It went viral that Cleveland was a poo show of a city to live in. Therefore, nobody wanted to move there. And without a population, you don't have a city. So he needed to do something before a city declined to a rusted out wasteland like what you would see in Mad Max. In fact, Mad Max was based off of like Rust Belt America, even though it takes place in Australia. Miller was heavily influenced by the downfall of industry and all that kind of stuff and what that did to society and whatnot. So, yay, Mad Max. Love those movies. Go check them out. He told the Ohio State Congress that he was going to need help cleaning up Cleveland, but the state pretty much, and ironically, just washed their hands of the situation. They're like, this is a Cleveland problem, not an Ohio problem. The same way the federal government would say, like, this is an Ohio problem, not a federal problem. It's like, okay, guys, that's not how we solve problems. That's not how we fix things. It's by saying it's not my problem. It's
like the prohibition of enforcement. What do you mean? The government, the federal government is supposed to take care of that. No, the states are supposed to take. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, who's going to enforce this? You went to great lengths to get it going. Now what? So yeah, it's that's something that I think that's been going on since like the Greek and Roman days. It's just like it's just a human thing. I can safely say that for me in any job setting, if I come across a boss that says that's not my problem, I have zero respect for that person afterwards. I know I'm not going to go to that person for anything. Because like, if you say, hey, that's not really my department, this is who you probably need to talk to get a better result. Cool. I'm fine with that. But to sit there and just shut you down and say that's not my problem, oh, that pisses me off more than anything. That is such a lazy way to handle anything. Anyways, undeterred, Stokes then reached out to his brother, Representative Louis Stokes, Democrat of Ohio, to reach out to Congress for federal help. This is where we get the EPA from. Mayor Stokes didn't quit there. He had to take active steps to clean up his city to show the federal government that he was serious about trying to fix things and not just try to get his hands on that fat fat, juicy government money. That's been a thing for a while where it's just like states will say they're going to do something just to get a federal grant. And then what happens to the money after that? So that's always been like a big problem in government financing is like, okay, what's the money doing 5 years later? And so Stokes didn't want that perception to go down. He's like, okay, I got to take steps on my end first to show the federal government that we are serious about this. And then the government would be a lot more understanding to help out. So he kind of came up with some plans here. Instead of just one, he actually outlined a couple of solutions, and he kind of implemented them out of order, in order, different times, different places. But the first solution was not necessarily a direct way to fix the problem, but you got to change the mindsets of the people first. The first one was defend clean water. The people who were destroying the American waterways weren't living in situations where they had to live, breathe, and drink the afterbirth of their factories, right? These millionaires, billionaires, these tycoons, they were living upstate in nice houses. They didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. Stokes showed that it was the middle and lower class income communities that had to pay the price. They couldn't move away. They couldn't just pack up and be like, I got to move to a different place where the water doesn't catch on fire. Like, they didn't have that choice or the means to do that. So he wanted to show that these are the ones that are paying the price. And these are the people that also work in your factories. So if they're too sick to even come to work because of your factories, like, can you see how this is a runaway problem here? So this would spark decades of discussions and various acts and laws like the Clean Water Rule into law about 2015 that protected waterways across the nation, that delivered water to about 117 million people to this day. Like, yeah, that's like half of America's population, or a third of America's population gets water, clean water, because of the Clean Water Rule.
A more modern example that most of you will probably remember or know of is the Flint water crisis in Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
Which probably had a hand in that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this was in 2015, too. I think the Flint issue, wasn't that like 90s?
No, it's very recent.
Was it more recent? Okay. I thought for some odd reason it was a little bit older, but that would make sense. If it is a more recent thing.
2014 to 2019-ish.
Oh, wow. Okay, so yeah, that would tie into this. And what's sad is that we kind of currently live in an administration that is actively dismantling all this progress protecting waterways. It's just so funny how we live in a world that is like, yeah, no, we don't need to have these rules, these laws, these acts in place. Like, get rid of them.
That's because people refuse to acknowledge the reasons why those things were in place in the first place.
Well, and the thing that gets me is that we're talking about like a fraction of a penny. Mm-hmm. Like, we currently have an administration that seems like it's doing everything in its power to destroy the science scene in America. Mm-hmm. Because we got to save billions of dollars. Like, it is, what was it? I think Neil deGrasse Tyson said that like NASA chews up less than 1/17 of a penny of a dollar in taxes.
That sounds right.
Like, it's a drop in the bucket in comparison to the rest of everything else that's going on. So before I get on a soapbox, I'll let you guys draw your own conclusions on that. And if you do have thoughts about that and what our government is doing, I'm be curious to hear what you have to say. Send us an email at thedaysfromsafire@gmail.com. I'd be really curious to get your guys' take on it. Solution 2, make cities work like a forest. This was interesting. This was something I never really thought of before. You think about a forest, it rains, and water will always fall to the lowest basin. It will always make its way to the lowest point in a forest. There it collects, and then it soaks into the ground, and then everything from trees and plants and whatnot pull from that water table for its own growth. And then water has this amazing ability of separating nutrients from the soil so that plants that take up the water now get the nutrients, right? That's just how forests work. Well, Stokes was like, cities need to work the same exact way. Cities get their water from water basins. So when it rains and snows, all that water does collect at some point. And it's going to pick up all sorts of stuff on the way to that that collection point. And if it's picking up poisons and toxins and flammable things and all sorts of horrible crap, well, that's eventually going to make its way into the water that people need to live on. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way. It's like your cities need to function a lot like a forest. So another plan was to educate industry leaders that the environmental effects of one region will affect those of another. We see this today. So, for example, air pollution in California will make its way to Arizona, and tire pollution can make its way into California, right? That big one is in the border between Arizona and Utah. There is a huge issue with used tires in southern Utah that are being dumped in southern Utah, but then now we're seeing that they're making their way here into Arizona. So now it's a two-state issue. It's not just located into one, and it applies here nonetheless. These issues are in Cleveland, but it will spread. It will start affecting other areas, which will then start affecting industry. I thought that was kind of an interesting take on it as well. And then we throw in a ton of congressional money, manpower, with a sprinkling of some science, common sense, and thousands of gallons of Dawn dish soap. Not the generic stuff from the grocery store like Walmart, but the bottles with the little cute yellow duck on them.
The good stuff.
It has to be that brand. That's the gallons of dish soap we're talking about here. For some odd reason, man, Dawn dish soap worked great for getting oil off of ducks.
It's the good stuff.
As opposed to some of the other chemicals that I discussed in the Torrey Canyon, where the stuff they used to dissolve the oil that went into the channel was like 1,000 times more toxic than the actual oil itself.
Oh, yeah.
the solvents or whatever. Yeah. Governor Gilligan, and at this time I'm thinking Gilligan's Island.
Yeah, it's a good name. I love that.
Yeah, you got the little white like skippers. Yeah, not skipper's hat, but the bosun's mate hat. And
this is 1960s, right? So he probably heard that a lot. Poor guy. He still probably heard those jokes.
Yeah.
Poor man. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he probably had that all through his retirement and whatnot.
I wonder how annoying it got.
So. And it came up again too when like Nick at Night ran reruns of Gilligan's Island.
That's right.
And I feel bad because like our audience, like a huge portion of the demographic of our audience is like teenagers to early 20s, and they probably have no idea what we're talking about.
Go look it up. If you don't know what we're talking about, go look it up. Come back.
Yeah, Gilligan's Island, man, it's a classic. It's up there with MASH and...
The internet is a real thing where you can go look random crap up that we mentioned.
Yeah, we encourage it. And if you need help finding random crap, send us an email.
Yeah. Because
the world is comprised nothing but of random crap. And God knows I'm full of it. So yeah, Governor Gilligan signed the Senate Bill 397 into law, thus creating the state's own EPA enforcement policy. A lot of the other states, every state now has its own little EPA in it. And then force factories to pre-treat wastewater before dumping it into the water supply. This is something that is expected pretty much everywhere now, right? If you have a factory like these data centers and whatnot, they have to treat the water before they dump it back into the aquifers. They can't just, even though it's like this is a data center, like how dirty can the water get? Doesn't matter. It still has to be filtered and treated before it goes back in. It doesn't have to be up to like drinking water standards, but it also can't catch on fire either. So that is a very, very common thing nowadays. So some good is coming out of it. And then also there's the improvement of sewage systems to help control the flow of dirty water to the right locations rather than just going straight into a river or an ocean. Like there's ways to set this up where all your poo collects in one area to be treated before it just gets thrown out into a body of water that everybody needs to live off of. After about 15 years or so, Cleveland, Ohio was really starting to change. They still had that reputation of being like a dirty, grungy city, but through their actions over the next decade and a half, the river fires stopped. That's a solid start right there. When you don't have to like figure out who's going to put out the fire this week on the river, hey, you made progress. Municipal waterways actually had water in them instead of toxic goo.
Hey.
Factories modernized and reduced pollution dramatically so you could actually see a blue sky. Plants and animals were making a return. Oh my.
That's good.
Yeah, like who would have thought that plants and animals would come back? The color green was naturally springing up everywhere, and not the green that glows in the dark from the sketchy factories. We're talking like actual like chlorophyll green.
Nice.
Yeah, so like you don't have to worry about going to the riverbank in the middle of the night and see it literally glowing green. That's a bad deal right there. If you look at Cleveland today on Google Earth, it actually doesn't look like a half bad place to live. I wouldn't mind visiting there sometime.
I'd visit. I'd like to see the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
You know,
I did see that when I was doing research. It is like the rock and roll capital.
Yes. A lot of good metal bands are coming out of there right now. I would love to dig into their archives. I know that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has an archive.
So, yeah, if you look at Google Earth, Cleveland doesn't look half bad. And that's because of all the effort and the money, the time that this mayor and governor and politicians put into making this change. By 1986, Cleveland, Ohio was unrecognizable from the past century of industrial revolution. This was actually a pretty quick turnaround, all things considered. When you factor in that this has been going on since like the American Civil War, that's a lot of history, a lot of pile up of stuff that had to be addressed. And
took them about 20 years.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Yep. And now it was starting to look like a place where people would want to live. And it was time to celebrate, right? And boy, did Cleveland, they wanted to celebrate in the most grandest, most visual, poignant ways possible. The only thing needed for this celebration was approximately 1,429,643 balloons, approximately.
I feel like that's counterintuitive. And maybe that's just my own personal bias here in 2026 and it's past midnight. But
yeah. Looking at Cleveland's actions in the past 15 years, we could see that they changed a lot. Like they spent a decade and a half just going gangbusters on that reputation of what Cleveland, Ohio was. Like it was the butt of a lot of jokes. It was criticized all over the newspapers. There were a lot of jokes, comics about it. Like you can find them online. They're everywhere. Cleveland was known as a pretty crappy place to be a part of, even though you can make a ton of money living there. And I don't really blame Cleveland for wanting to celebrate that when they can look around and be like, hey, the city is actually in really, really good shape. Let's tell the world and let's see if we can change our reputation. And that's exactly what they did. Part 5. It's our final part here. This is where the balloons finally come into play because this whole episode is named Balloonfest 1986. Where are the balloons? Well, this is one of these cases where this next part only really works if we talk about the insanity that came before that kind of inspired this event. Otherwise, it'd be like, oh, haha, yeah, it's funny. Now it'll stand out a little more, and there's going to be a little bit of irony to it. So part 5, the 2 missing bodies in 1986 Balloonfest. Yeah, we're going to talk about some bodies here.
Cool.
On the evening of Friday, September 26, 1986, at around 7 p.m., neighbors Raymond Broderick and Bernard Salzer took their 16-foot aluminum fishing boat out to Lake Erie for some nighttime fishing outside Cleveland, Ohio. Why not? Go out there in the middle of the night and catch fish. I personally don't know how you do that. Like, I've gone night fishing before. I never caught a single thing.
Oh, really? My dad does it all the time.
I hear that's like one of the best times to go fishing.
But
it's also probably the best time to get abducted by aliens because you're in the middle of a lake and nobody can defend you. So
that's why you won't find me out in the middle of the lake with my dad going fishing in the middle of the night.
Yeah. And you probably like sleep. So
I do. It's
like, true. I know you like fishing, but you probably like sleep a little more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're retired, that's a different story.
That's true. And my dad is retired. So
they told their families that they would return by about midnight. At around 8:30 p.m., a severe thunderstorm hit and brought with it like 40 to 60 mile an hour winds. It's a heck of a storm for that part of the world when you think about it, because there's no mountains or anything to generate the winds. But nonetheless, there's like a little mini hurricane came through overnight. It is believed that the 2 men capsized their boat that night. That is the general consensus. When midnight rolled around and the two men didn't come home, and it's not like they had cell phones they could call or whatever, the families filed a missing persons report pretty dang quickly. Unfortunately, they only had reasons to fear for the worst. Like after that storm, they're just like, man, yeah, there's nothing good that could have come of this. Search parties were sent out to Lake Erie, and the plan was to search for the two missing men extensively through the day of the 27th, which was a Saturday, relying on daylight to help find them. The next morning of the 27th, more storm clouds were in the sky, but it looked like it was going to be a clear day. It's going to be one of those days where the rain clouds are like these giant, like little, or not giant little, but these isolated puffballs that kind of float in front of the sun, like, and then they move on. It was going to be one of those days. So enough daylight to actually try to find stuff. Other than a large rain cloud occluding the sky for a few minutes, and some wind conditions remained good enough to keep looking for the two missing men. Everything went sideways when a massive cloud covered the sun at around 2 p.m. It was dark, like it was opaque. It was black. It was like a black cloud. And it gave this really eerie twilight effect all over Cleveland and, you know, the lake and all that. Like it was like something you would see from Lord of the Rings, you know, when they're in Minas Tirith and they're looking out across towards Mordor and it's just black clouds and everything. It was like that, and very, very ominous, and it kind of messed with the visibility. About an hour later, the search had to stop because they couldn't see well enough to find the two missing men. Suddenly, one of the search boats shouted that they had spotted what appeared to be a human head floating in the water. Believe it or not, seeing a whole human head floating in water, like upright, is a good sign, because when a person drowns, they're usually like belly down and their heads really aren't floating above. Like it's parallel with their backs or their stomachs or whatever. But to see like an actual head upright, well, hey, you know, they may actually just be floating out there, like wearing a life jacket or whatever. Cold as all get out. But yeah, seeing an upright head like that is actually a good sign. When the boats arrived, they noticed it was nothing more than a balloon. It was like a yellow balloon that had fallen to the lake surface. Hey, it happens, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
You find balloons all over the place. The search crews heard more and more claims that they found someone, but when the boats eventually arrived to the floating quote-unquote head in the lake, it was yet just another balloon. They looked to the sky, and the cloud that covered the sun for hours only got bigger. There was something else strange about it, though. When you looked at it closely, it kind of had like a texture to it. Furthermore, it was hovering over the lake. It really wasn't moving. If anything, it was just spreading out, but it wasn't like moving in a direction. When clouds are in the sky, they tend to move in the direction of the wind. Here, this cloud was just chilling. It really wasn't going anywhere. And that was really, really strange. As the minutes went by, more and more balloons appeared on the lake surface. Hundreds or thousands of balloons were eventually just bobbing on the surface, thus obstructing the search for the two fishermen because they couldn't tell the difference between a balloon or a human head. Up close, you could probably tell. But hundreds of yards away, you really can't tell. And I was reading that, like, one of the guys on the boats, he said that there was just nothing but balloons of different colors out there. And each one of them was probably spaced a couple feet apart from each other. And it made searching for these guys absolutely impossible. The strange cloud in the sky revealed itself as a massive cloud of helium-filled party balloons, nearly 1 million of them. And they were all released at the same time from the heart of Cleveland, Ohio. Hours passed and Lake Erie no longer resembled a lake, but a sea of balloons. At this point, there was no way the searchers were going to be able to find the missing fishermen, and chances of finding them alive were quickly dwindling, even if they were wearing life jackets. That is how we start Balloonfest 1986. None of the thousands of volunteers could have imagined, let alone understood, the colossal mess they were planning to celebrate. They were planning and celebrating Cleveland's new Cuyahoga comeback stunt. Back in March of 1986, Tom Hollowich was contacted by the United Way's Cleveland chapter to put together an event that would celebrate how far Cleveland had come since the last Cuyahoga River fire of 1969. The United Way wanted this to celebrate the cities, its progress, its cleanliness, as also generate a ton of money for like local charities. So we do something big enough, people give us money, we can give it to charities. It'd be like a win-win, and it's a good celebration. It gets people out of the house to go look at balloons. Over the past 16 years, millions of dollars, thousands of workers and volunteers, and the implementation of numerous ordinances, acts, laws, and agencies had all worked together to clean up Cleveland, Ohio. The comeback in its own right was incredible and an inspiration to cities all over the country, and it really was. Just the idea was like, hey, if Cleveland can clean up its act, so can you. So I kind of respect that. I actually don't have a problem with any of this. I don't really blame a city for wanting to celebrate it turning over a new leaf.
It's more like the 1,000,000+ balloons. That's the questionable choice.
Yeah, and that is the question mark with an asterisk on it that hangs over this whole thing. And there's actually a reason why they chose this, which I'll get to here actually pretty soon. Yeah, Tom Hollowich was put in charge of creating a spectacle that would cement the idea to the nation that Cleveland was back, baby, and it was better than ever. Go back a little further. December 1985, Treb Heining, he had an eccentric company called Balloon Art by Treb. This dude made a name for himself when Disneyland wanted to celebrate its 30th anniversary as well as Walt Disney's birthday by launching 1 million helium-filled party balloons over Anaheim City in California. So I understand that in order to have a small business, you have to kind of niche down. Like you got to get specific. Mm-hmm. This is really freaking specific. Oh, what company? What do you do in your company? We pollute the sky with helium-filled balloons. You don't say. Like, that's not something you ask like a 5-year-old or like an 8-year-old in elementary school. So what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to own a business that puts millions of balloons in the air.
Honestly, I could see at least one kid.
There would be that one, yeah.
There would be that one kid.
And it would be this guy.
Yeah, and you'd laugh at him because it's cute.
Yeah.
Right? But then he actually goes and he does it.
Yeah. Then you see it on the news and you're like, oh, if I'll be. Yeah.
Oh,
good on him, I guess.
Yeah. He did it.
I guess you can't laugh off everybody that makes a comment like that, but hey, you know what? It takes all sorts. I'll give him credit for that. So that's how this Treb guy kind of got his start, and he was contacted by Hollowich because Hollowich had an idea. Like, hey, we can have people like buy balloons, almost like a little sponsor, like they can put in X amount of cents per balloon. We'll fill it up. And then we'll launch it in Cleveland, and that will help generate money for like charities and celebrate and all that kind of stuff. So there is a logic behind it, and it looks cool because in Anaheim, when they did their balloon thing, they set a world record for 1 million balloons, and hey, it looked pretty cool, and it really didn't cause that many problems, if any, at all. But that's Anaheim, California, not Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland, Ohio
that they knew of.
Yeah. There was factors going on here that nobody could have imagined. So days before the launch of September 27th, a massive net 250 feet by 150 feet was erected over a public square in downtown Cleveland. There'll be pictures of it on our website, thedaysdumpsterfire.com. The net is gargantuan. And it was designed to be about 37,500 square feet. And it was designed to hold millions of inflated balloons.
Okay.
That was the idea of,
okay,
like, you would fill a balloon and then let it go underneath the net, and the net would hold it until it was time to release them all.
Got it.
So Hollowich ordered in full-sized semi-truck takers with compressed helium tanks to park around the net. So you had like this giant net, like a canopy that's like the size of a city block. And then you would have all these like 53-foot tanker trucks all over the place full of helium. Tables and chairs were set up under the net, followed by tens of thousands of boxes of party balloons. And they were positioned in a way to create like these stations. for volunteers that showed up or wanted to help out to start filling balloons. So long stretches of hoses would go from those giant helium tankers to like all these stations. It was a pretty impressive feat to put together when you think about it, like logistically and all that. All 37,500 square feet of the net was designed to stretch up to 30 stories in height so that it could contain the millions of balloons that were intended to be launched all at once. The plan was to launch them at around 3 or 4 p.m., but due to some weather concerns and the night before and all that kind of stuff, they're like, hey, let's launch it. Let's do it sooner because we just don't know what the weather's going to be like in the later afternoon. On the day of the launch, excitement was electric as thousands of volunteers took their seats to form assembly lines. One person would bring boxes of balloons over. Another person would disperse bags of balloons. Another person would open them and prepare the balloons to be filled with helium. A person who was in charge of the fill hose would fill the balloon. So I'm sorry, this would terrify the crap out of me because like I don't like loud bangs, unexpected loud bangs, and to be sitting there with thousands of volunteers filling balloons for hours. Do you know they were popping them left and right?
Oh yeah.
I would have a heart attack doing that. The last person, these people had the worst job. Their job was to tie the ends of the balloon and then release it.
Ugh.
So like your first like 10 or so probably wasn't bad, but it eventually turned out like reports were coming in like crazy of people like getting blisters on their fingers, wrist strain, all that kind of stuff. Like, did you know I'm 43 years old, Kara, and I still don't know how to tie a balloon?
Yeah?
Yeah, I've never learned how to tie a balloon.
Oh, interesting.
Yep, I don't know. And I've gotten this far in life just fine without that skill. But yeah, I've never learned how to tie a balloon. It's really weird. So yes, anybody out there who can tie a balloon, you're better than me. As the day progressed to the afternoon, it was apparent that the net was pretty dang full. The goal was over 2 million balloons, but some factors were piling up to make the goal happen a little sooner. One, the injuries were mounting. People were getting tired, admittedly, because they'd been working on it since the wee hours of the morning. They had been filling balloons for, I think, like 8 hours prior, something like that. That's a full-on work shift of just doing nothing but filling balloons. Crowds of onlookers were starting to get a little impatient, even though the sight of nearly 1.5 million balloons under a net was a pretty surreal and impressive sight. Like there's video feeds, like the news agencies, the newspapers, the nation was out there in hordes all reporting this. So like the whole country was watching Cleveland, which can be a really, really good thing and a really, really bad thing. Depending on how this turns out. By about 1:30 p.m., Hollow Witch had to make the call. Launch soon or not launch at all. The last thing they needed is 50, 60 mile an hour winds to come in like the night before and then scatter these balloons all over the place and cause pure pandemonium. Like either you launch it or you don't. You scrap the whole thing or try doing it tomorrow. The issue is that these balloons aren't designed to hold helium for a super long time. Maybe a few hours at most, because you don't want them in the atmosphere for too long, because then they're going to drift like across the nation. And well, you saw what happened when there was one Chinese spy balloon flying over America. Like that was one balloon. Imagine 1.5 million of them floating all over the nation. Granted, the Chinese one was one big giant balloon, but still, America's bored. So I had to make the call. Thousands of onlookers with every news reporter from every channel, video cameras pointed at the bulging balloon net that was the size of a skyscraper. Newspaper reporters were on hand to account for posterity the sheer epicness of this historical event. Cleveland, Ohio was going to go down in history with the greatest cleanups and rebranding in American history. And now they're going to smash the Disneyland record balloon launch, which was 1 million balloons. This was going to be about 1.5 million balloons. So still about 500,000 balloons less than what they wanted to do. As we will see, that was probably a good thing rather than a bad thing. Like no matter what, they launched early, they still beat the record, and the Guinness Book of World Records people were there too to keep track of it.
Nice.
So like there was a lot of attention on this. After a brief countdown, word was given to cut the quick releases that anchored the net to the ground. The idea was that the net would lose all its tension at the same time, and the balloons would come pouring out of the net all at once to make an unforgettable experience. That sort of happened to a point. Most of the quick connects gave way as ordered, but some held together. So instead of all the balloons going up at once, I would say 1 million of them floated up pretty dang quickly. But then there was still like 500,000 that were kind of like spilling out from the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the stragglers.
Yeah, the holdouts.
Yeah,
it was like one observer called it like an upside down pouring.
Okay.
Like imagine pouring water upside down. That's kind of what it looked like. And when you think of it that way, I can see that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when you watch videos of it, we'll have it on the website. You can see like, hey, this is pretty cool. And the whole world was watching it, especially America. So the sun and tops of skyscrapers were completely occluded by the balloons. All the balloons were different colors. So like red, blue, green, yellow, the whole spectrum was up there. And instead of making the sky really colorful, it actually made it jet black.
Oh, that'll make everybody feel good.
Yeah, and it's based on the principle that if you take all the colors of light, red, blue, green, or whatever, if you take all the colors of light and focus it at one point, it turns white.
Mm-hmm.
If you take all the colors of paint in the world and you mix it all together, it turns black.
Mm-hmm.
They thought like all the different color balloons would make for like a party of colors and stuff like that. No, that didn't quite pan out.
It's not exactly the way that turned out.
Yeah. So it just turned into a giant black mass.
Oh.
For a while, everyone cheered and celebrated. That was for the most part a clean and record-breaking launch. However, something strange happened that made people go silent, almost like an Oz effect. People started to get really, really quiet, and the cheering kind of stopped after like 15, 20 minutes. The balloons didn't float away. They got up to like a few thousand feet, and instead of floating downstream, probably become some other city's cleanup problem to deal with, but the balloons instead just hovered over the city. About 30 to 40 minutes after the launch, Cleveland's skyline disappeared in a black cloud of balloons. While eerie, it was still pretty cool to see from the ground, but the worst was about to happen. Slowly, the balloons started to drift downwards to the ground. That wasn't supposed to happen. They were supposed to go up to a certain height and either pop or float away to a different part of America. What started with a few dissenters who didn't want to listen to authority of nature and man's intentions turned into thousands of balloons slowly falling to the ground. Instead of falling straight to the ground, they slowly dispersed and then gently rested on freeways and airport runways and buildings and houses and municipal structures and
good.
Like Lake Erie in the middle of a two-person search and rescue mission.
Yeah.
So you kind of see where this is going here. This isn't going according to plan. Like this is not turning out exactly at all like how the Disneyland one went, but it's going to get worse. Calls started to come in via 911 of car accidents taking place all over the city due to visibility and people just being distracted. I mean, you're driving along and you see something like this, you're not paying attention to the road. And then when you have like what people called it as like a snowfall effect of balloons. So all these balloons were gently coming down all over the place. Like, yeah, the highway system, the freeways, like everybody's crashing into each other. Because it's bad enough like in Arizona when it rains a little bit. I mean, the traffic in Arizona, disaster when it rains a little bit. I could not imagine what it would have been like if there was 1.5 million balloons coming down. So on the outskirts of Cleveland, owners of cattle and horses noticed their livestock was starting to freak out. Can't say I blame them.
I don't either.
If you're a cow just chilling there and you've never seen a balloon before, like one, you could probably rationalize. But to see hundreds of thousands of them fly over or land in your pasture, that's not going to sit well.
It calls for concern.
Yeah. And I feel like if you were a cow or a horse, you would just look up and be like, oh, that's strange. And then you're just going to go back to whatever it was that you were doing before.
That's possible.
Then you're going to have somebody like my daughter, like my youngest daughter. If she were a cow or a horse, she'd look up, see that, freak out, and run into a wall. You know who I'm talking about. You know which one would do that.
I plead the fifth.
Okay, Fauci. It didn't take long, but pure pandemonium was starting to ensue. Word needed to go out to every helicopter and airplane around Cleveland to fly out of range of the city. Like, don't even attempt to get into Cleveland airspace. If you got to fly over Cleveland, don't go out a route. If you are heading into Cleveland, don't land. Don't even attempt it. They had no idea if the balloons would be a problem to plane engines, and more than likely it wouldn't. But why risk hundreds, if not thousands, of people dying in plane crashes all over Cleveland if they can avoid that?
Yeah, I don't blame them.
So yeah, like air traffic controllers across the nation had to keep track of all their planes that were in the air, especially in that part of the country, and tell them to reroute, divert, which that also makes things difficult because an air traffic controller could be telling his plane, while the guy is in LA, but his plane's over Ohio, be like, hey, I need you to drop down to like 43,000 feet or at this speed and go in this heading. But the person in Ohio who's telling his planes to drop down to a certain height or go up to a certain height, they don't necessarily know what's going on with somebody else's plane. So like there are systems put in place that tell pilots that, hey, pull up. Like you're like they can detect each other when they're at the same altitude and whatnot. So like trying to stack all these planes up and not crash, I'm surprised nothing did actually happen from that. That was pretty impressive. So yeah, like now the nation's air traffic controllers were having to just redivert, and this caused people to get delayed and all that kind of stuff. Now we're up to hundreds of flight delays and cancellations. Out in Lake Erie, the rescue efforts to find the missing fishermen, Raymond Broderick and Bernard Salzer, had to stop because so many balloons had fallen into the lake that they couldn't discern the difference between a balloon or a human head. While Cleveland was reeling from this hot mess, environmental hot messes was just starting to begin. The balloons that were used were in fact biodegradable. Cool. At least they thought that through. However, it can take 4 months to 6 years to dissolve. That's a problem. Mm-hmm. And that's just for the raw latex. Like if there's colors, dyes, whatever bonding agents in there, that won't degrade anytime soon. So the balloons were made of latex, which naturally resists water. I mean, it's the reason why they use latex in various things involving human fluids and whatnot, because it doesn't break down in water quickly.
Right.
But also for like gloves and stuff like that. Like they do break down, but not in the time frame that I think people were hoping they would break down in Cleveland. The balloons that landed in the rivers and the lakes didn't dissolve fast enough for fish not to eat them. So weeks and months following the spectacle, traces of forever chemicals were found in fish and wildlife for thousands of square miles. The jury's still out on the actual like environmental, like ecological impact of all this latex landing everywhere and being consumed by animals. I think latex is a pretty inert thing. Like people can have an allergy towards it, but in terms of like, for most people, if you ingest it or whatever, it's just going to go through your system. Like it shouldn't cause problems. But again, I have to really like italicize, underscore, quote, parentheses, bracket, the should part. Because how many times have we said that something shouldn't be a problem when it really is?
Right.
So the balloons eventually made their way into Ontario. So they went across the lake. So now it's turned into an international matter. Just gets better and better. Thankfully, the Canadians are nice, right? Like, hey, saw some of your balloons. They kind of shut down our cities. Just FYI. All right, have a nice day. So at least they had that going for them. Anyways, the cleanup effort took months, and the damages to property and human life, wildlife, and infrastructure exceeded tens of millions of dollars. When the balloons finally settled, the lawsuits began. The most high-profile lawsuit was the case filed against United Way by the widow of one of the missing fishermen, whose search had to be called off due to the balloons obstructing the search.
Yeah.
That one's kind of tricky because if I was in her situation, I would want somebody to take responsibility. But I also know, too, that like if their boat capsized the night before, the chances of them surviving the night in 60-degree water throughout the next day is going to be kind of slim. Like it's, yeah, I see it. I can see both sides to this. And I think United Way, they did. It was initially a $3.2 million lawsuit, but they settled out of court for an undisclosed amount of money. Obviously, it looks like United Way tried to do right by this. there was a lawsuit filed against United Way for a horse, an Arabian horse, that got freaked out at the sight of all the balloons, bolted across the pasture and collided into a fence, and it like caused like permanent brain damage.
Oh man.
So like these are horses that can exceed like hundreds of thousands of dollars in value.
Yeah.
It's crazy how expensive a horse can get. All in all, the debacle took a severe hit to the United Way. After all the lawsuits, the United Way lost all of the money generated for charity to pay off the court fines and lost cases and the cleanup costs and all that stuff. The Guinness Book of World Records removed and no longer supported the challenge of largest balloon launch ever because of this event.
Understandable.
Yeah. And the Guinness Book of World Records, they didn't want to be held accountable for this. Like they didn't want to be
Right. The liability.
at the time. They were really supportive of it and really wanted to make it happen because it's another thing they could put in the book. But then suddenly like politicians could be like, hey, why would you push for something like this knowing that it was going to cause all these problems? They're like, you know what? We're just not going to support that. I think they do that a lot. Like they have ethics committees where like, I can't remember if they have like somebody who ate the most amount of like ghost peppers in one sitting.
Nice.
Like, I don't think they would have something like that because that could potentially kill somebody. I think, yeah, this was like pretty easy to be like, yeah, we're just not going to support these types of events anymore. Due to the media coverage of the event, what was going to be free promotion for Cleveland's amazing turnaround turned into another long list of criticisms of Ohio's inability to take responsibility for the environment. This completely backfired. So it was 1868, 1883, 1887, 1912, 1922, 1936, 1941, 1948, 1952, and 1969 all over again.
Yay.
So like this whole thing just completely derailed everything that Cleveland had worked for in the past 15 years to clean everything up. So what the hell happened? What happened here that didn't happen in Anaheim? So why didn't the balloons do what they were supposed to do and float away in a specific predetermined way? Like they had one job to do, and that is to fly up to a certain height and go one way. Don't do anything else. When you look at a balloon, yeah, some little kid leaves their balloon, like that thing is gone in seconds. And like, why would this be such a big deal? And why were these balloons coming down way earlier than expected? The issue was later determined to be known is what is known as an inversion. And inversions are things that have complicated relationships with human beings. What's an inversion? Okay, you have hot air and you have cold air. Whenever you have hot air that kind of forms over an area, and then you have cold air underneath it, that cold air can't go anywhere. It's like the hot air entraps the cold air. And therefore, anything that is inside that cold air, it can be smog, it can be clouds, it can be 1.5 million balloons or whatever. Whatever is in that cold air part is going to stay there. It's like a dome effect. If you go to the Grand Canyon in the mornings, you can actually see like rain clouds inside the Grand Canyon. Like you can look from the edge over the top of these rain clouds. As the day progresses, it heats up. Those clouds burn away, right? That is an inversion. California has this problem a lot. On the east side, they have hot air from the ground. On the west side, you have the cold air from the oceans. And what happens in like LA is that cold air gets trapped underneath all the hot air higher up in the atmosphere. And it makes pollution like stay and not go out to the ocean or whatever. It's happened in Arizona a few times. A really, really famous one happened in the 50s in England, where Winston Churchill, he decided to have all the coal plants kind of like inside the city of London. And that way you couldn't just take out one plant during World War II and then now all of London doesn't have power. Instead, you have many smaller coal plants, and all these little mini power plants were just pumping out black soot left and right. And then an inversion took place, and all that soot and everything, instead of drifting away, hung over the city for like a week or two. And it made the city opaque, like car accidents all over the place, pedestrians getting killed. People couldn't see. They could only see maybe 2 feet in front of them.
Yikes.
So like inversions are a fascinating thing. I may do an episode on them where we look at some other more famous inversions in the past, but that is exactly what happened here with Cleveland. These balloons got stuck in this inversion. And if you take a balloon, a helium balloon, and you put it in a freezer, it will actually shrink down and get smaller because the helium molecules become less and less energetic, and it makes the balloon less buoyant.
Mm-hmm.
We did this in our classroom, right? Where we took a balloon, put it in the refrigerator, pulled it out, and it didn't want to go anywhere. It just dropped to the ground. But then once it heated up, then it would float again. That's what happened here, is that these balloons were in this cold weather for too long and they couldn't go anywhere. So they lost their buoyancy and then they started to drift to the ground. Where they were supposed to land was anywhere else but inside the city. And so, yeah, that's what caused all this. And there was no way they could have predicted it. I don't think anybody knew what an inversion was. It was a very, very freak thing. But boy, did it cause a lot of problems. As for Raymond Broderick and Bernard Sulzer, it was later concluded that the men died the night before, right? They died on the 26th at night when that storm hit. They found that the boat did capsize, and they also discovered that neither man was wearing any life jackets. So they did find the bodies like 2 days later.
Yeah.
The men were not wearing any life jackets. The likelihood of them being alive the next day, while everything was being occluded by the balloons, impossible to tell. Like that, there was no way that they could confirm that they would have been alive during all that. So more than likely they died the night before. The United Way should not have been held accountable for that, but they were nonetheless. So that is the story of the Balloonfest 1986. It is a tale of a city had developed a really, really, really negative reputation, and it went really far out of its way to clean things up, admittedly. But then I think they kind of tried too hard to change that reputation all at once, and it just turned into a dumpster fire as a result. So note to self, if you have a bad reputation with somebody, don't try to change it at once. It's not going to work.
Just keep doing you, man.
Yeah, keep doing you. Change your ways, right? Like, don't be afraid to better yourself, but don't think that you're going to change everybody's opinion of you overnight. And don't try to find an event to do that, because if that event doesn't work right, then you're just going to look even worse than you did before.
It's a balance.
Yeah. Maybe launch like 2 balloons instead of 1.5 million of them.
Maybe even better, just like have a cupcake.
Yeah.
Call it that. Call it good.
Yeah. Or like here, they could have done like a call-in phone thing. Maybe have a bunch of food trucks show up. Like there could have been a million different other ways to celebrate their success than trying to getting your names in the history books for what is now known as a ecological disaster.
Yeah. It's a bad deal.
So that is it for this episode. Tried to keep it as a one-parter. It's a little beefy, but I'm going to edit down a lot of it. So we encourage you guys to head over to the davesdumpsterfire.com. That's where we will have all of our episodes. We'll have the artwork. We have like our show notes on there. We have a lot of stuff there that's worth perusing. Be sure to click on the link in the show's description. We have a little link there that you can go to help support us. Basically, you are supporting us with like a few dollars a month. That helps to pay for hosting costs, and what it really does for me is it boosts my ego. It makes me feel that, you know, people do enjoy what we're doing, and if we did help at all, if we did make you laugh, we shared some information with you, we made you feel a little better about things afterwards, and you want to help pass that along, yeah, hit that link in the show notes or leave a comment. That's the other big thing. Yes, it doesn't help us get found on algorithms and whatnot, but reviews do help. They help other people determine if they want to listen to our show, which is always worth listening to.
It's also a free way to say, hey, you're doing a good job. That makes us feel good inside.
Yes. And if we aren't doing a good job and you have ideas for us, just email us. Like, we would love to hear your feedback. So But yeah, we thank you guys for hanging in there. We appreciate your feedback. We would love to hear more from you. But in the meantime, we'll catch you on the next episode and keep it a hot mess.
Bye.
I got a burp coming on that. It's like one of those pukey burps that. Yeah, I hate those burps. We'll leave the Africa thing on the cutting room floor and maybe bring that up in a separate episode. That's a big. Got all that?
Yep.